We'd like to welcome you all here to the webinar today. Thank you for joining us to hear more about how using your BestNotes can help you meet the Joint Commission requirements. We hope that you'll learn how to get to your data point quicker by listening to this presentation. We'd like to introduce ourselves. My name is Kristen Franklin. I'm the Director of Outcome Tools here at BestNotes. And we also have partners here with Mike Petrie from Petrie Consulting. And I'd like to have him introduce himself right now.
Hi, everybody. Full disclosure, the seat that Kristen sits in now is a seat that I sat in several years ago. I used to work for a private pay behavioral health care company and was charged with collecting outcomes data for our program and others in the same family. And as I was trying to fulfill my duties, I came across Outcome Tools and met with these folks, and ultimately we joined together to facilitate Outcome Tools and to sell it to the world. And then as we became more wise about what services were required, it became clear that in addition to having a solid data collection support system like Outcome Tools, a lot of organizations needed some additional ongoing support to ease the burden of data collection and to help feed back metrics into like the clinical process, for example, and in other ways so that people could see results and put them to practical use. And so I've been working at this stuff for a long time, and I'm really happy to be here talking to you now in partnership with Outcome Tools.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to have you here. We're going to talk a little bit about our webinar objectives. We hope that today you'll learn how what the new Joint Commission requirement is and how that applies to your organization. We also want to show you how our systems together will help you meet those requirements. And then we're going to tell you about some of the other support services available. We have a Joint Commission support package, and then some of Mike's remote research director dashboard services that he can provide for us. So what is the new Joint Commission requirement? The Joint Commission has always required outcome measurement. They have just taken a bold stand this year, though, beginning January 1st, 2018. They revised their standard to use a standardized tool within your organization to measure your client so that you can use that to inform your goals, objectives, and individual's plan of care, treatment, and services within your organization. The other side of that is that they want you to aggregate the data that you gather and improve or inform your quality improvement efforts within your organization. And so you'll take all of your data and make decisions within your organization of how can we improve the treatment that we're providing. So what we want to do is cover some of the questions that your Joint Commission surveyor could possibly ask you. We watched a webinar recently that went over some of the things that they will cover, and they kind of fell into three categories of: does your organization have an instrument that's appropriate for measurement-based care? Do you administer it consistently at multiple intervals in the care process? So are you measuring at regular time frames and then taking that and informing your care, treatment, and services throughout the treatment of your client? And then do you actually take the data and do something with it at the end? So you're gathering all of this data, but what are you going to do with it? Are you, they want you to improve your quality of care. They want you to educate your clients on what they are experiencing and are they improving over time, and discuss that with them in your in your treatment progress reviews that you're doing. So what are the questions that your Joint Commission surveyor will ask during your review? There's kind of two categories that your surveyor is going to cover: how and what you're using to measure. So that's going to help you to justify your decisions. So they want you to demonstrate and justify that your tool will meet the requirements. They also want you to document and show that what you're using to gather data from the surveyors is being used within your organization. So that's also done on a client level documentation. So within BestNotes, you'll keep track of it on your treatment plan and your assessments and your progress notes. And then on a program level, you'll want to document why you chose your instrument, what you're doing to improve your quality improvements within your organization. And so all of that will be included within your documentation to meet these two requirements. So the Joint Commission has given us some guidelines on what instruments qualify, and this is the criteria that you should use when choosing what tool you will use in your organization. So some of those criteria are that it should be valid and reliable, and it should be a tried and true survey within the industry. It also should be sensitive to clinically significant change. So be able to show your show that your clients are progressing or not progressing within the range of what you're measuring. And then it should be also appropriate for repeated use. So some instruments are only to be used at the beginning of treatment, at the end of treatment, or even a one-time use survey. So it should be able to be used during treatment, and you should measure often so that you can inform your care, treatment, and services while you still have the client in treatment. Anything post-discharge won't be able to meet the criteria. And then also it should include a clinical cutoff. This is so that you can discriminate between clients who will need services and those who don't. And that should be shown through the measurements that you're using and the instances that you're giving throughout your measurement. What tools don't qualify? So measurements that are showing the satisfaction of, like a satisfaction survey. Also measurements for therapeutic alliance. So you can use therapeutic alliance surveys in conjunction with the ones that you decide to use, but you cannot use them solely to meet this criteria. Also, any medication tracking or treatment compliance surveys don't qualify. And then also post-discharge surveys, ones that are used after treatment, don't meet this the criteria. So I'm going to have Mike kind of address some of the specific questions that your joint surveyor will address throughout your survey.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. So what we've done to try to make the process easier for our customers is that we have selected the top-notch instruments, those that cover the widest range of symptoms, so that regardless of your treatment milieu, you will be measuring something that will meet these criteria and that will also stand a very high chance of being practically valuable for you to direct the care of services, both for the individual and for the overall organization. So you can choose from other surveys that are available in the library that will qualify. In our opinion, in most circumstances, they would be an inferior choice to the OQ 45.2 and the Youth Outcome Questionnaire, depending on whether you're dealing with adolescents or adults. And so the reason for choice of this survey is spelled out in the documentation provided by the instrument vendor, and we will provide additional documentation to you that says this is a normed and reliable survey. This is a valid survey. This is a survey that was actually designed to meet all the criterion that Kristen just explained. And just a little insider information, this last fall I went to a Joint Commission conference where they focused a key session on this new standard, and the director of research, mental health research for the Joint Commission, was actually using slides from the OQ measures family of instruments to illustrate what the highest standard would be to meet the criterion. So you're on safe ground. So we'll help you justify and answer this question. So your surveyor may ask, are you measuring your entire population with an appropriate survey? And really what they're looking for is to make sure that you are measuring the entire population unless you have a very sound reason for not doing so. For example, in some detox centers, clients are just simply not coherent, and the length of stay is so short that it wouldn't make sense to do multiple administrations. But as long as you can justify your decisions, you'll be fine on your review. So they're going to ask, how frequently are you collecting your data? So when you go through the implementation process with us, we're going to take a look at things like your length of stay, your type of care, and we're going to ask you questions about the culture of your organization. But we'll figure out a schedule that will fit for you, and then your charts and graphs will show you the instances. So this is admit 0 days since, admit 3 days since. So the x-axis of your aggregate charts will be easy to call up and answer the question about how frequently you are collecting data. So they're going to ask, how do you know, based on the use of this instrument, when significant change is occurring? So what you're looking at here is a very simple color-coded chart where anyone with a green cell is in the non-clinical or normal range. And then this coloration change corresponds with increasing severity on the clinical range. So if you're not green, you are in the clinical range, with least severe being yellow, most severe being this dark oxblood color here. So that corresponds to this chart. So what we're looking at here is here's our key, and this is our baseline score. So we're looking at the Youth Outcome Questionnaire, which has 6 subscales. So each of these, this is the composite score. So this is the score of the total survey that's corresponding with a pretty severe clinical range. And then each subscale is unpacked here. So you can see that the most severe subscales are intrapersonal distress and interpersonal relations. So in answer to the question, how do you know when there's been change? As we move forward, so this is admit and this is discharge. If there's a change in color from baseline to any subsequent column, then that indicates that there has been a clinically significant change, meaning that enough points have been changed to meet one reliable change index or more. Another way that you can tell if significant change is taking place is to come to our clinical staffing report. So this is designed to take all of your current clients and break up the population into segments so that you can see at a glance how many people in our population are unchanged from the prior administration, how many are positively changed with clinical significance, and how many people have regressed with clinical significance. And you can click on these different pie regions to see a list of those clients. You can also see a smattering of the clinical status of your entire organization. So based on this pie, 60.9% of the population is in the normal range, with decreasing with percentage with clinical severity. So the clinical staffing report here is ideally used by clinicians. Come in, sit down, begin your staffing, pull up those folks that have clinically regressed, look at those who have improved, look at your flatliners, so you can keep a pulse on your population. So your survey is going to ask you, how are your staff trained to administer and interpret the results? So part of the services that we provide is that we give you training materials in 3 different formats. We give you written material, we give you recorded training videos and tutorials, and we also facilitate live webinar trainings with your staff, your clinical team, whomever needs to understand how to use the surveys. And then we will provide you documentation of what we trained and how those resources can be accessed at any time by your users. How are results applied and where is it documented? So this is where we get into using this system to create master treatment plan objectives. And the wisdom in doing this is that if you are writing into your master treatment plan a reference about where the client was at baseline, then you're already documenting many of the things that they need you to document, that you're using it, how you're using it, and then your master treatment plan will direct you to pay attention to your surveys, because you'll have to respond to whether or not the client is improving based on the Youth Outcome Questionnaire scores. So for example, in this example here, what I would recommend is looking at symptom distress as the most clinically acute subscale. If you clicked on the symptom distress subscale, like the interpersonal relations is clicked here, and to the right you will see a list of all of the items that are embedded within that subscale, and they're sorted by severity. So you could use the entire subscale, for example, as a master treatment plan goal, saying something about, we would like to see the interpersonal relation subscale increase with clinical significance from the moderate clinical severity range into the normal range. Or you could work with the client to choose specific items that could be used as a target for clinical improvement. So you can document these things in your master treatment plan and in your treatment planning progress notes. So Kristen's going to take over talking about how you might use the system to document things in BestNotes.
Now that you've gathered your data on your tool, it's important to take that data and document it within your organization, especially within BestNotes. So you'll take the information that you've gathered from your instrument and on your intake assessment or whatever document you use on intake, you'll be able to input your baseline score and say this is where the client has started. And then after you assess the client, then you're going to be making goals, objectives, and interventions with that client. And so those can be documented on your master treatment plan within BestNotes so that you're showing that you're informing your care, treatment, and services based off of the information you're gathering from your standardized tool. And then the last thing that you need to do is educate the client. So some of the questions that they will ask you is, does the client understand how the instrument is used to monitor their progress? So while you're doing your progress notes, you can discuss the results with the client and make goals to improve that score or to work on a specific item within that the tool demonstrates. It also will ask you maybe has anyone in the clinical team discussed the data with them, and do your progress notes indicate that results were discussed with the individual served? And so that should be addressed within your progress note, that you are discussing the results with them.
So one of the things that they want you to do is in addition to looking at clients specifically and tracking their progress, is to be able to aggregate your results so that you can look for opportunities for service improvement. And so you have a couple ways of doing that within the Remote Research Director dashboard. One is what we're looking at here. It looks just exactly like an individual chart, but it's actually showing an aggregation of data based on all the surveys that you have into the system. And so you can scan and say, is there a particular subscale where our clients are not seeing improvement, or are there subscales where we're seeing improvement, but post-discharge there's a pretty significant regression? So you can look at it in this table format, but I think what is more useful is really to look at it here in a line chart format so that you can see where the dips are. So what you're looking at, if you're not familiar with the Youth Outcome Questionnaire, a higher score means lower functioning because it's measuring symptom distress. And so what we're shooting for is for clients to move from the clinical range, which is above this clinical cutoff, down into the normal range. So all you have to do is just simply document that you've looked at this and discussed it as a team and created service improvement goals. So back to the questions that Kristen read at the beginning. So your survey evaluation is going to come down to, do you have an instrument that's appropriate for measurement-based care? Well, with our system, yes, you will have that. Do you administer it consistently at multiple intervals in the care process? We are going to help you do that successfully, and we will help you easily track whether or not you've done that. So we'll help you get it set up. It's really up to you whether or not you follow through with your data collection. And do you actually look at the data and do something in response to it? And the answer is you'll have documentation that you've done these things if you're using the tools to build treatment plan goals, and you'll have to figure out a system to document that you've looked at your aggregate data to make improvements. So you will be well prepared to answer yes to these questions, and you'll be good to go.
All right. So we've had a few questions come in that, Mike, I'd like you to address. Somebody was asking, what do you mean by a clinical cutoff? So if you could go ahead and explain that for them.
Yeah, I'm going to blaze back in these slides. Let's see if we can find a good one here. Okay, so a clinical cutoff is a line that marks the difference between someone who looks like the normal population and somebody who looks like they're in or should be in treatment. So a word about how the Youth Outcome Questionnaire and the OQ 45.2 were normed. So what they did was they created this survey at Brigham Young University, and they blasted it out to thousands of people. Some were high school students, some were children in residential care, some were in foster care placements. And so what they were doing is that then they collect all those data back and they say, so can we figure out just from these data whether or not these people were in treatment or whether or not these people should be receiving clinical services? So if you gave a survey out to a bunch of people in the normal population and they came back with scores that were the same as people who were in treatment, then the survey wouldn't really be valuable to show you who is in need of clinical services. So the clinical cutoff is just telling you whether the person looks like they need care and services are justified or not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the rest of the questions are going towards, are we going to provide slides for you? Yes, we can provide a copy of these slides for you to review with your staff or anybody else that might be interested in this. And also we're recording this so we can send out a recording of the webinar. All right, I don't think we have any other questions, so we can keep moving forward on, so how can you meet these requirements using BestNotes and Joint Commission, the BestNotes Joint Commission package? We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but we're going to go into more detail now for you about how that can be done. So the first step for you is to choose an instrument, set your data collection schedule, then you're going to use those results to inform your care, treatment, and services, and then you'll document those within BestNotes, and then you'll use the Remote Research Director dashboard to aggregate your data and look at it from a visual standpoint. So how do the systems work together? You all are users of BestNotes as your EHR. We have a module off of BestNotes that's called Outcome Tools. Some of you may be using it. If you're not, we'll turn that on for you. And then that data from Outcome Tools is then pushed to Petrie Consulting, the Remote Research Director dashboard, for him to be able to show you visually that data analysis. So that's kind of how the systems work together and how we work with each other.
Okay, so in the implementation process, one of the first things that we have to do is just figure out with what frequency you're going to be delivering surveys. And so we'll help you get that figured out. R2D2, which is the acronym for the Remote Research Director Dashboard, 2 R's, 2 D's, it's built in with an automated rule-based survey creation feature, which means that if you want to measure your clients every 2 weeks, then we will create a rule that says, okay, if this is an adult client, we would like the OQ 45.2 to be created on a 2-week cycle. We would like that survey to be active for 5 days, and we would like that to be delivered directly to the client's email or whatever delivery method we choose. So we'll get you set up with the right schedule, and then we're going to go into BestNotes, and you're going to click this Outcome Tools button to establish an initial connection between BestNotes and the Remote Research Director dashboard. So that first time, all you have to do is click Add Client, and that will connect the 3 systems here. So by clicking the button in Outcome Tools, you're adding the client simultaneously to Outcome Tools and to R2D2. And once that initial connection is established, then all of the information that is pertinent to the data collection process, like first name, last name, date of birth, date of admit, all of these fields are updated directly from BestNotes. So if you come into BestNotes and enter a discharge date, for example, that will push a notification right to R2D2 instantaneously, and then the rules will be applied according to what we determined. So once that client is added, then you have access to R2D2. It's a web-based software. You can use it on any device where you have internet access, and it plays best with Google Chrome. And here you can find your clients, you can administer surveys directly from here, and you can do all the other administration features from the homepage. So what we're looking at right here is just a little, it's called a Kiosk Portal. So your organization will have your own unique URL that you can bookmark on any device that you'd like to use to administer surveys. A lot of folks use Chromebooks, and we recommend it. They're cheap, and they are they look like and play like a computer. It's just a familiar format. But once you have that bookmarked, then there's a secret code that you grab from the home page in R2D2. And once you enter that code, then the client simply has to enter the first name, last name, and date of birth to access any surveys that they need to complete. This is an example of what the survey looks like. So this will be pulled up and they can complete it here. Once they submit the survey, it's immediately scored and charted. And then you go to the FIT dashboard, which stands for Feedback Informed Treatment. It's one of the buzzwords for client progress monitoring. So the FIT dashboard will show you how the client's doing at baseline and chart all other instances. Just as a quick review here, these are called instance codes. So instance codes are stored in reference to the client's position and time compared to admit or discharge date. So if the prefix is A, that means they're admitted 3 days since, admitted 15 days since, etc. And once discharge arrives, then it's D, and then a number indicating how far from discharge. And the reason that we do this is so that it makes it easier to aggregate your results. So whether a client started the program in January and another one in August, you can aggregate your data to say, I want to look at all of the clients and where they were in the first week of treatment. And so that's part of the function of the instance codes. So we're panning back here. This is just isolating the table that shows us client progress. Now, if we pan back, we're looking at a similar table. In this case, this is just has only taken one survey, so we have a baseline score. And I've clicked the intrapersonal distress to see the results for that specific subscale on the right. So you go and look at your results. You can look at your aggregate results. So this is another view of program's aggregate scores. And the next thing to consider is how to use the data collection support tools in the Remote Research Director dashboard. So if you've had any experience trying to collect data, it's deceptively complicated. There are a lot of moving parts and many things to keep track of, and frankly, it's generally boring. And so when you're up against a boring task that's complicated, the likelihood for human error to result in data loss is high. So we've built a system that is designed to just make it easier and less painful to collect data. Some of the pitfalls that commonly cause people to stumble is that you have to keep track of, I mean, it seems like a simple task, but okay, if I've got 50 clients and clients are taking these surveys every 2 weeks, how do I keep track of who's actually completed survey? And how do I know who needs follow-up? And how do I know which clinicians are not giving surveys to their clients? Well, we have a research coordinator's task list. It's the little coffee cup icon right here. And R2D2 bot scans the system to do two things for you. One, it scans the rules and then looks into the system to see if there are missing pieces of information that are going to prevent you from collecting data. So if you're hoping to collect data from the parents of adolescents, then the system is going to tell you if you have adolescents that don't have parents tagged in BestNotes as parent guardian. It's going to tell you if you have issues where people are showing up their census in BestNotes that are not actually represented in outcome tools. So each week we upload your census into R2D2 so that we can help you keep close track of adding clients and making sure that they're sampled. And then this is a pending surveys list. So it's showing you all the surveys that you have that are active right now, awaiting to be completed. And you can sort those by instance if that's convenient for you. So if you click any of these pending surveys buttons, then it's going to show you a list of all those individuals. And it's sorting the list in order of urgency. So if it's a red cell here, that means that you have 7 or fewer days until the survey, one or more of the client surveys are expiring. And you can see this little number here indicates actually how many days you have left. So Rust Le Raspberry here has 2 days until the survey is going to expire. So this would be a hot candidate for following up. So if you clicked on Rust or Green Bet Tomato, if you click on the client, then it opens up this category on the right that allows you to track what follow-up efforts you've taken. You could administer the survey from here. You can send a text message with a link to the survey, or you can send an email to the clinician or anybody attached to the client for follow-up. And so if we pan back and look at the full panorama of the research coordinator's task list, we see that this is just a one-stop shop. You can come here and do all of your follow-up. One thing that I failed to make a slide of, and I think I'm going to be rebuked by about this by my partner, is that if you do follow up with a client here, you can choose to mute that client's name so that it is a soft gray, so that you can see that they're still pending, but you know that you've already taken the follow-up action. So you just say, okay, well, I've got 2 days. That's a bad example. Let's say we had 7 days before this survey expired. I could say, okay, don't bother me about this for 5 days. And then in 5 days, the mute would bring it back to full color, so you'd know you need to follow up. So what does this cost you? To get all of the surveys and the remote research director dashboard and access to outcome tools, it's $310 per month for the first year, which is just spreading out an implementation fee over those 12 months, and then it's $250 a month for consecutive years. It comes with our on-call support. You can call, email, text with support questions, and we will respond to you usually within 24 hours on business days. And that's the cost. Any questions? If you have questions about pricing, actually, Kristen, do we have any questions that have popped up right now?
Most of them are just asking about pricing. Some of them are asking about training on if you come physically to come train for your consulting services, or is it all remote?
It's generally remote. There are circumstances where it makes sense to come on site, and we just figure out pricing based on how much time you need. So we will do it if it's necessary. But I'd say 98% of the time we do everything remotely. Any other questions there?
Yeah, another question that a few people asked is, what's the timeline on this for Joint Commission? So this requirement began on January 21st of 2018, but I think they're allowing for the year for you to get compliant, and we'll start really holding you to it on January 21st of 2019. So they just want to show that you're making an effort this year to start the process of data gathering, and so that's what we're here to help you to start that process.
Yeah, I've heard it from multiple times from the Joint Commission directly that they're not really putting a bunch of teeth behind this right away, because they don't want people to panic. They want people to do this correctly. And so the sense that I get is that if they come in after January of this next year, if you demonstrate that you're good faith, you've bought a system and you're doing the best you can to collect data, I think that's going to satisfy them. But when they come back for that second review, if you're not really in compliance, if they can see that you haven't been particularly rigorous in your efforts, I think you're going to get dinged.
Another question is, does the Joint Commission require a minimum number of data points for each client? And then somebody was asking, how often should they be delivering surveys?
Okay, they do not specify how frequently during treatment. And so the frequency is really up to you, and we will help steer you in a direction that's going to keep you on safe ground. So for example, when I'm working with onboarding somebody who's, let's say it's an average 12-month length of stay residential treatment program, we're going to measure about once a month. There's generally not enough change to be hitting your population, every week. But if it's a 90-day wilderness therapy program, then we're going to look at every week or every 2 weeks, because it's a short, intense type of treatment. So that should give you an idea about how we go about choosing there.
How do we determine what instrument to use?
Okay, so
yeah,
the vast majority of folks are going to be using the OQ measures, because they're just robust, and they cast a wide net, and they work in so many different treatment areas. However, if you're a specialized program, let's say you're working with trauma, or you're specifically addiction recovery, you can still use the OQs, but there are other qualifying instruments that are in the Outcome Tools library that are open source, and we will steer you in the direction of picking those if you'd like to diversify the system that you're using. So you have a lot of options, and we'll help you figure it out.
Somebody said they didn't get an answer. Oh, specific measures for eating disorders. Is there a list that you could send of the approved measurement tools? So I actually have linked the library of outcome tools on some of the answered questions. I can also send that out when we send out the slides for our questionnaire library as well as the Joint Commission library of tools.
Yeah, and if I recall, Kristen, I think there's at least one qualifying eating disorder measure that's in the library right now, and I believe there may be 2 or 3, but it's been a little while since I've looked at that.
Yeah, we've added a few. I think we have probably about 3 or 4 now at this point.
Perfect.
Is there a contract link to the outcome measurement service?
Is there a what?
A contract link to this outcome measure service. So Chris, for outcome tools, many of you probably already have it included in your BestNotes subscription. And then for Mike, yours is a year-to-year monthly service, isn't it, or month-to-month?
Yeah, it's month to month. There's not a long-term contract. If we're not meeting the need, then you can stop services with a 30-day notice.
Somebody's asking, will a smaller IOP business benefit from this survey? 6 to 10 clients averaging a 3 to 6 month stay.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in many ways, it's even more powerful in a small setting like that, because you know the clients, you can tell the stories, and when you're sitting in clinical meeting. But really, according to the Joint Commission, there isn't a size of organization that's too small. Like, everybody needs to be doing this. It's always good. I mean, one of the things that we're not really focused on in this particular presentation, because it's really about Joint Commission standards, is that every provider really ought to be measuring their outcomes so that they can answer questions about success rate with some horsepower, frankly. So yes, I say for sure.
Here's a good one from Katie. Do you recommend extending an expiration date on assessments that have not been completed in the 10-day window, or should we forgo that interval and wait until the next interval to collect the data? Will this skew our aggregate data?
That's a good question, and it won't skew your aggregate data, because the way that your aggregate data are reported is based on when the survey was actually completed in proximity to the admit or discharge date. So if you extend the dates, it's not going to tweak your results at all. But I've been doing this for several years, and my recommendation is just forget it. If it's gone outside of the expiration, if the survey's expired, then move on to the next instance whenever it comes up, because you end up messing around with a lot of unnecessary hand-holding of expiration dates, and it's just more work than necessary.
All right. There's a few pricing questions. I think that the pricing ones can be talked about specifically if you're really interested. It would be great if you talk with Mike about your pricing structure for your program, especially if you've already got outcome tools or you're already using OQ measures. That can be answered on a case-by-case situation. Current library. Okay, so a few of you are asking about the CANS, because in Idaho, the CANS is being adopted by the state of Idaho as a functional assessment. I'm actually working right now with Michael Higbee here for a solution for the CANS. Outcome tools isn't necessarily the best place to do that because of the length of the survey and complexity of it. So if you are interested in the CANS, go ahead and send me an email, and I'll get you in contact with Michael Higbee, who's in charge of the Idaho profile here at BestNotes. If you want to get outcome tools enabled, go ahead and contact me, Kristen at bestnotes.com, and I will get you set up with that. And then somebody is asking, can you give examples of when these surveys have been given to clients, treatment plans, therapy sessions on their own? do you find the
Yeah.
best time venue to give them?
So there are a few different approaches to this. In some organizations, because the program endorses feedback-informed treatment, they rely on the clinicians to administer the surveys. And they do that at the beginning of the session so that the client and the clinician can review the results as a part of the routine session. This is the platinum standard out there. We know that there's a mountain of data that show that when this happens, it actually improves client outcomes in a shorter period of time. In fact, doing that with the OQ 45.2 is on the NREPS registry of evidence-based interventions. So it's not just saying that this is a great survey, we give it a thumbs up. It's saying that if you use this survey in session, then this is an intervention that has an evidence base for improving client outcomes. So that's one model. Another model is just to simply have a group organized where all the clients come in and complete surveys. That way you've got fresh data and you've corralled everybody in one spot. And then another option is to have someone, let's say it's a residential program, you might have a night or an evening staff who on the weekend who administers surveys to everybody so that they're ready to go for Monday morning. And I guess there's even another option is like when you have clients who have access to technology, you can just email the surveys directly to them. But what's the best fit for your organization? Man, it varies from one place to another. So we'll share whatever wisdom we have and help you get all that stuff figured out.
Basically, the last question I think we should address, and then we can go ahead and close, is some people are asking if you have outcome tools on BestNotes, do we need to purchase the monthly joint commission support package or the OQ45 included? So I'll let Mike answer the benefits of doing the Joint Commission support package on top of your outcome tools and BestNotes.
Okay, yeah, so you certainly can use outcome tools and subscribe separately to the OQ measures and use those instruments in outcome tools. And you can make that system work. The benefit that you get with the Remote Research Director dashboard is that you get alert systems that will text and or email clinicians, for example, if a critical item is endorsed, like maybe a suicidal ideation item. You get the automation features, which are going to take a bunch of the legwork out of assigning surveys and keeping maintenance on whether or not everybody in your organization is receiving the surveys on schedule. You have a bunch of metrics that we haven't shown you here that show you how well you're doing with your data collection success. And you also have much more robust, sortable graphs. So like that clinical staffing report, for example, it's a really powerful tool to be able to take a look at your population and find those people who are not progressing in a push of a button. And so you get those graphs and charts, and then you get the data collection support tools with the research coordinator's task list. So basically, I have not done the math on this, but I am certain that the Remote Research Director dashboard and this package will help you cut the curve to data collection and help you get more out of using the data than if you just go it alone.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending our webinar. Did you have something you wanted to talk about here, Mike, actually?
Yeah, just one last thing.
Yeah.
So there is a service that's even larger than just the Joint Commission package, and that's the full Remote Research Director services. And if you're interested in this, just give us a call and I can give you a demo. But basically what we do is we come in and we do an implementation system with you, but then we have a member of our team who would be your Remote Research Director who actually looks with human eyes into your account on a weekly basis and maintains regular contact with your research coordinators so that we make sure that we're proactive about providing trainings when we see weaknesses in your systems. We're just Johnny on the spot, and we report to executive leadership on a monthly basis about how data collection is going. And so it's a much more robust service that makes sure that data collection is always on our radar. and not necessarily then does it need to be on the radar of executive leadership, because we're going to make sure that stuff gets handled. So that's the short of it. And it costs roughly twice as much as the Joint Commission package.
All right. So if you want to get started with the Joint Commission support package, here's Mike's email for contacting him. And then any questions regarding outcome tools or BestNotes, you can go ahead and email me, and then we can get you connected with Mike for further information if you need that as well. So thank you all for attending, and we appreciate the time that you've spent with us, and hope that this is helpful for you for your next Joint Commission survey for those of you that are preparing for that. And we will be sending out a copy of these slides as well as recording and some links to our questionnaire library and some Joint Commission support items. So hope you all have a great day, and we will hopefully talk to all of you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.